Good evening, and welcome to the final week of the Discover Boston College Virtual Open House. My name is Stephen Koo, and I'm one of the Associate Directors in the Office of Undergraduate Admission, and on behalf of the office, I thank you all for joining us tonight. In the midst of a continuing pandemic and a college search process that looks different than in years past, we are not taking anything for granted and truly hope that you and your families are healthy and safe. Since we don't have any opportunities for in-person on-campus programming this fall, we've tried to bring Boston College to you in as many ways as possible through virtual info sessions, live streamed tours, one-on-one student conversations, and most notably through our Discover Boston College Virtual Open House. Among the 24 or so webinars we've held, I'm excited to say that for the past 4 Thursdays, we've invited panels of BC community members to help parents of prospective students learn more about navigating the college transition. Tonight, we've invited 3 incredible members of the BC community as panelists who can help parents navigate the college transition as it relates to understanding Boston College's mission as a Jesuit Catholic university and how that helps our students in shaping our community. After all, knowing more about a school, and especially its beginnings, helps students and their parents better understand the potential fit. With us, we have Chris Darcy, Associate Director, Campus Ministry, Megan Sweeney, Associate Professor of the Practice and the Cooney Family Director, Pulse Program for Service Learning, and Father Tony Pena, Associate Vice President and Director of Campus Ministry. In a moment, I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves, but first, I want to mention a little bit about the format for our time together. After introductions, we have some questions for our panel, but we also want to encourage our audience to ask our panelists questions as well, questions that relate to their work and Boston College's mission. Please use the Q&A function, not the chat. Please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and you can ask questions there. The chat function has been disabled, but we will do our best to answer as many questions as possible from the Q&A. So with logistics out of the way, I'd now like to have our panelists introduce themselves. Could you each provide us with your name and role, what do you do at Boston College, and also give us a few minutes on your personal path to BC. I'll say I'm a pretty simple person, so maybe we could go alphabetically, starting with Chris, moving on to Megan, and finishing with Father Tony. Chris Darcy, welcome.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you to the Office of University Admissions, and it's wonderful to be with all of you tonight. I'm Chris Darcy. I'm one of 2 Associate Directors in the Office of Campus Ministry at Boston College. I'm celebrating my 24th year at the university. This is my 6th year in the Office of Campus Ministry, which is a division of University Mission and Ministry. Previous to my time in Campus Ministry, I spent 6 years in the Office of Residential Life, working with residential student formation and residential ministry. Prior to that, I spent 6 years in the Office of the Dean of Students, working primarily with undergraduate leadership and programming. And prior to that, I was the coordinator for residential life on the Newton campus of Boston College. Again, it's a real joy to be with all of you tonight. My path first to BC, before I get into a little bit of my role, I got an undergraduate experience at Framingham State University. I got my first master's degree at Fairfield University in Connecticut, and my second master's degree at Boston College in the School of Theology and Ministry. So I am a proud Eagle. My role in campus ministry allows me to not only embrace the passions of ministry and student formation, but it also allows me to be in a place where I can be a conversation partner and conversation companion to our undergraduate and graduate students at the university. My areas of responsibility in the department center on faith formation, liturgical ministries, pastoral care and counseling, retreats, and multi-faith ministry. And I have the great privilege of working with 15 amazing colleagues, which you'll hear more about as we go along. I think one of the greatest things that I can share in terms of our work is that in the Office of Campus Ministry, all are welcome into everything that we do. Every program, every initiative, every faith formation opportunity, every opportunity to engage, to be a resource on campus. No matter what a student, her or his faith tradition might be, all are welcome into what we do. And for me, that's very heartening because that really is embodied in the mission of the University of Boston College. The other thing I think that's really amazing and a grace for us every day is working with talented professional staff, all master's degree, that have amazing talents and gifts and that are very present to our students. And I think the last thing is working collaboratively with amazing departments across the university. So that's a little bit about me. Thanks, Stephen.
Thanks, Chris. Megan.
Thanks for inviting me tonight. I see we're up to 175 participants. That's very exciting. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Pulse program first, and then just share a little bit about how I ended up at BC. So all undergraduates at Boston College need to complete 6 credits of philosophy and 6 credits of theology. And there are many, many ways that they can satisfy these academic requirements. One way they can do this is to take the core level course that we offer through the Pulse program for service learning, which is called Person and Social Responsibility. So under normal times, and perhaps this will come up during the Q&A, but under more normal circumstances, students are in class 4 hours per week and serving at community service partners for 8 hours a week plus their travel. We've had to obviously make some adaptations this year due to COVID. Pulse is fundamentally a social justice program that asks students to think about questions like, what is a good life? What is the common good? What constitutes a just society? What are our obligations to those individuals who have been and continue to be oppressed? And how does a human being become a person through taking up their social responsibility? The interplay of service experience in conversation with classic and contemporary texts of philosophy and theology informs students in their understanding not only of these big picture anchoring questions, but the course also gives students an opportunity to really reflect on themselves, who they are as human beings, what motivates them, what their core values and beliefs are, and who they may want to become as human beings in a complicated world that is so full of so much suffering and pain. We typically partner with about 55 community organizations every year, and we have capacity for 500 students in the program. I came to BC in 2006, so I'm in my 15th year, if I've done the math correctly, and my 7th year as the director of the program. I came to BC because when I was finishing my PhD, I kept finding myself drawn to the Pulse job, because the Pulse job combined the things that were and continue to be of interest to me, to be certain philosophy and theology, but also social justice and student formation. I have been involved with some of the community partners that Pulse partners with, myself personally, and I also have formal training and continue to practice in ministry, including campus ministry when I was in my PhD program. So for me, Pulse was a really beautiful way to bring together my interests in education and student formation. So thank you for having me again.
Thank you, Megan. And Father Tony.
Well, after listening to Megan, I wish I was in the Pulse program. I think I would have enjoyed it and I would have grown wonderfully. But my name is Father Tony Pena, and I'm the Associate Vice President for Mission and Ministry at Boston College. I'm one of the principal stewards of the faith formation and spiritual formation on campus. And my direct responsibility is to assist the Vice President for Mission and Ministry in any way he wants me to do it. And that keeps me busy. But my specific role is to oversee 3 offices within the Division of Mission and Ministry. The division has 8 offices that are about the business of keeping the mission moving throughout the academic year and beyond. My principal responsibility to oversee 3 offices. One is the Montserrat office, a fantastic office that is aimed at assisting high financial needs students who come to BC and sometimes need a little help to play on the level playing field that every other student at BC is playing on. So they provide books, they provide food, they provide so many resources, computers, just to level the playing field so that any student of high financial need can access the same stuff that someone from a more resourced family can do. That's the Montserrat office. The other office that I oversee is another terrific office. It's the Volunteer and Service Learning Center. And that is an office that has two functions. They provide opportunities for students to do service. The service that they provide is twofold. There are a couple programs that are year-long, but also if a student wants to do a week of service, they have some place to go. And also that office assists other offices outside of the division of mission and ministry, because we're not the only ones who do service on campus, who want to start a service program and don't quite know the ABCs of how to do that. So this service, the Volunteer and Service Learning Center assists people in putting together service opportunities outside of the Division of Mission and Ministry. So we're good neighbors that way. And then I oversee the department that Chris Darcy is as my associate director, that's the campus ministry. And we provide opportunities for religious retreats, for worship, for pastoral care, especially around grief and loss and that kind of thing, adjustments. And we also have a myriad of service opportunities. So that's kind of my general responsibilities. How I came to BC, I was a student, don't listen, Chris, Megan, 1970 grad. I've been around a while. And my journey to be back to BC was after ordination, I was a chaplain at a high school for 12 years. And then I moved up to Holy Cross, which is the other Jesuit school up in Worcester, fantastic school. And I loved it there. But after Holy Cross, I had an opportunity to join the Boston College. And I wanted to very much because I was thinking back when I was a kid, it was the Boston College that nurtured my development, nurtured my faith in a great way. And I was looking for an opportunity to pay back, in a sense, an institution that did so much for me personally. So it's wonderful to be here tonight, and I'm looking forward to this chat that we have with all of you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, all three of you. It's always fun to not just hear a little bit about your paths, but I think learning more about each and every one of you and the stories that you have and what brought you to us this evening, which is great. I see that some questions are coming in, and I know you guys are raring to go in terms of questions. The first question, actually, tonight's session is about the transition to college when it comes to this mission. And maybe it would help people in the audience. What is Boston College's mission? And how does your work further that mission? I think we have a really good idea already, but maybe a bit more specifically, what is the mission of Boston College?
Well, can I jump in?
Of course, yes.
I would say this, that any student, any gifted student out there is welcome to this Jesuit and Catholic university. Anyone who's got gifts, because our mission here is to hold people accountable to develop their giftedness. So if you come here, whether you're a Protestant, Catholic, Jews, Muslim, Hindu, it doesn't matter. Even if you were just searching for some kind of idea of how you wanted to make meaning in life, if you came here with a willingness to take your giftedness and develop it for two great reasons. This is why we can say everyone is welcomed here who wants to participate in this mission. For two great reasons, we want people to develop their giftedness. The first is obvious, for their own good, so that they're more complete as a human being. But the second one is really critically important. We want every student here, over the 4 years that they spend a time at this Jesuit and Catholic university, has a specific mission. We want them to develop their giftedness for the good of the entire world. And so at graduation time, if someone could take their diploma knowing this, that my giftedness that I came in as a 18-year-old is different now. I've developed it, my intellectual life, my personal life, my social life, my spiritual life, and I'm in a better position now with my giftedness. I feel more complete, not quite done yet, but I feel more complete, and I feel ready to give something back to the world. That's, I think, in a nutshell, is how I view the Boston College Jesuit Catholic mission.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I guess maybe the follow-up then is the work that you do, how does that further this mission?
You asking me personally or anyone?
Any of the three of you.
I'll step back and let other people talk a little bit.
I can talk a little bit about Pulse. I mean, so ultimately, Boston College is an institution of higher education. So students are here to learn, right? But they're not automatons or robots. They're human beings who, as Father Tony mentioned, are here not just for their intellectual development, but also their personal and their social and their spiritual. And I think a course like Pulse that really focuses on the undergraduate, undergraduate education. It's not just trying to teach students about ideas, about what historical thinkers have said, not just about what Plato said or Aristotle said, but really trying to help them think about what those ideas mean for their own life and what those ideas mean for the world in which we live. So it isn't just knowledge that stays out there, but it's really, I think, trying to help students think about what it is that they're learning in their classes that can really impact them as full human beings. And so if an abstract question like what constitutes a just society is raised in a classroom, that can be a very quote unquote academic exercise, but then it might touch deeply on students' own experiences, on people they've known, the various kinds of events that they have themselves encountered. So it becomes an integration exercise as well for them.
I agree wholeheartedly with Megan and with Father Tony. The one thing I would add is the three key components, I think, of student formation. You heard Megan mention it, I touched on it earlier, is that experiential, reflective, and action modalities. And the first one is, what are you experiencing inside the classroom? Those of us in university mission and ministry, one of our primary goals is to support the academic mission of the university. So as Megan touched on, you're experiencing something, all right? What are you prepared to do with that? That's where the reflective piece comes in. So reflection doesn't mean that, reflection in one of our chapels or one of our meditation or prayerful spaces. No, it means that you're taking the moments of pause to reflect on what you've just experienced. What was that paper like for you? What was that class discussion like for you? And then weaving that into a co-curricular experience. That doesn't mean you have to go and join 10 different clubs or organizations or do 5 retreats. No, what it means is, something like Pulse, or something like, joining a CLC, a Christian Life Community reflective group. And then acting. What are you prepared to do once again, once you've had that experience in the classroom, and how are you balancing that in terms of your social and spiritual life as well too? So I really think in supporting the academic mission, but also being able to challenge our faculty, and certainly those of us administrators as well too, it's challenging them to what they're experiencing, and then gauging their reflective component. And then again, not telling them what to do, not saying you should do this, but in terms of action, challenging and supporting the acts that are to come. And that's where I think the giftedness and kindness, and then the ability to be just and to be responsible comes in.
To add to what Chris and Megan said, my boss, Father Jack Butler, who's the vice president for mission and ministry, has a great line that I love, and I steal it all the time, but I have to footnote it. And that is this: Boston College is a school, it's not a church. And so everything we do is about how can we educate someone from the day they enter the university to when they graduate, and even beyond that in many ways. But if I had to have like an image, what happens in our Boston College culture, whether it's in Pulse or it's in some of the programs that Chris is involved in, or in an academic classroom, it's a lot of systematic nudging. We nudge our students not to fall asleep, or to kind about their responsibility to become more. St. Ignatius, who was the founder of the Jesuits are the founders of 27 universities in the United States and over 800 in the world. And so St. Ignatius, who's the founder, used to have a favorite word. It's a Latin word. Excuse at 8 o'clock at night, the Latin, but it's magis. In fact, if I had a tattoo, that would be my tattoo. It's a Latin word that means more. Magis means more. And St. Ignatius thought that any of his institutions, any of his schools should be continually, systematically nudging students to be more every day, more today than they were yesterday, and tomorrow more than they are today, and more academically proficient, more spiritually enriched, more socially mature, more imaginative, more athletic. So we expect our coaches, our PhD faculty, our administrators, our campus ministers, our admissions directors and mission people to be nudging people and reminding them, whispering in the ear of our students, are you being more today than you were yesterday? And if you aren't, maybe it's time you started getting after it. And so it's this systematic nudging towards the more. And I think if you had that image that in 4 years, someone can stand up and say, I'm a lot more than I was when I entered, I think the educational exercise has been successful.
Thank you so much, all three of you. A question has come in, and it says, as a Catholic Jesuit college, how do you actually encourage faith in your students?
Chris?
It's an excellent question. And I think it goes back to a little bit about what Father Tony alluded to in talking about St. Ignatius. And what's very Ignatian as part of our university is the ability for us, again, supporting the work that goes on in the classroom, the work that Megan and her colleagues undertake, being able to challenge students to be women and men informed with others. And that starts with the triangle that we talked about earlier, the intellectual, social, and spiritual. Well, the social part of it is meeting students where they are. And that's the important part. I think Father Tony alluded to earlier that, all of our students enter into us in very different places. They may have been raised in one faith tradition, but they might be questioning, or they might be more passionate right now, or they might be in a place where, I'm not sure. So that's where I think our role to support the university mission, but also more importantly, support the academic mission to what is going on in the classroom, especially when it starts in freshman year, with the core. But then going beyond that, in terms of putting ourselves out there to meet people where they are, to encouraging people to not only to come to our masses and our liturgies, that's certainly one important aspect of it, but is to engage conversation and to welcome them. So it's just not, hey, let's put up a flyer, mass is here, or this faith sharing group is here, or this opportunity is here. It's putting yourself out there beyond the office, beyond the screen, beyond your general role and responsibility to engage the dialogue about where a student, where she or he is in their faith tradition, and to listen. And that starts certainly, with the application process. It certainly starts with orientation. That would be the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is that, we say that we're going to be welcoming and inclusive, and I think we work really hard to that. But it takes an entire community, to make people feel comfortable to be able to say, this is what we're doing in terms of our faith formation lens. This is what campus ministry is about. But it's just not campus ministry, it's the university community. The other aspect of what we do too is all of our multi-faith ministries. We have 25 active groups on campus, and that is from programming to worship to prayer and reflection, as well as off-campus worship opportunities. So I think, one of the things that I'm very, very passionate about is the fact that, we're trying to meet people where they are. The last thing I think is being open to the challenges. Right now, a lot of people would say to us, okay, well, because of the pandemic, we haven't been able to go to church or to worship or to services. Right, we understand that. And through Father Tony and Father Jack Butler, we've been able to de-densify and to re-image all of our prayerful spaces, including our chapels. So I really think it's a prolonged question, but it's a community responsibility, one that we pride ourselves on in taking the lead in. But the conversations start in the classroom. It's working with our colleagues. It's being collaborative. But more importantly, it's meeting a need where it exists, because the need right now is very different than the need last year or 5 years ago or 10 years ago and so on. So I think that's the way we approach it right now, especially during these challenging times.
From the perspective of sort of the academic side of what you're talking about, one way of understanding theology is faith-seeking understanding. So what we're trying to do, and as at least in my classroom, I'll speak for myself, is try to help students better understand some of the aspects of religion, specifically Christianity, most centrally, given the identity of Boston College, but to help them understand maybe why certain beliefs happened the way that they happened or developed the way that they happened, maybe exegetical tools that people use now to try to understand scriptural texts for students who are coming most certainly from a Roman Catholic background or a Catholic background, an introduction to Catholic social teaching and a deep dive into some of the principles that are at play there to help students have a more rational approach or an understanding approach to some of the elements of a faith tradition. We talk about prayer too, not necessarily from a pietistic perspective, but rather from a place of wondering about mystery or questions of ultimacy. So it's a kind of training to ask questions, I think, and try to open students up to questions of ultimacy where they might not necessarily be thinking about those kinds of things. And we do that through the experience and pulse of the service and encounters of real human encounters of love, of friendship, of grace, if you want to like to use language like that. So there are places that can then be analyzed using some theological lenses to understand what's happening.
And within mission and ministry, one of the things that we have been fortunate over the last 20 years is that we've been able to attract really wonderfully attractive, faithful people who demonstrate day in and day out how their faith really animates who they are as a person and how they make sense of the world. So within mission and ministry, the students who enter Boston College are going to bump into some very attractive, intelligent, faithful women and men who really exemplify how faith is lived out in a very concrete and very attractive way. That I think when people see others who they admire kind of crediting their faith to shaping the way they deal with the world, and as Megan said, the complexity of our world and so much sorrow and so much consternation in our world today. If they see these campus ministers and people in mission and ministry really crediting their faith as the way they have made sense of the world, it makes them think about maybe faith is something that I should spend a little more time thinking about and talking about, as Chris was saying. So they're going to bump into some faithful people on campus that are going to, I think, inspire them.
Wonderful, thank you. Clearly the mission is not just one piece, it's an all-encompassing piece when we start talking about Boston College. And we've definitely talked about the academic side of things. And a question has come in and it asks, how would you say that BC continues the Ignatian hallmarks of intellectual rigor and finding God in all things?
I'll start. I mean, I think all of us can answer a little bit about this question. I really think it starts with our community, and I'm going to use an example. As many of you know, very much like your own schools, public and private, religiously affiliated, we were forced to transition our operations mid-March of this past year to online format for our classroom teaching, undergraduate, graduate, and for a lot of our administrative and staffing opportunities. A number of departments came together between March and May to help transition a number of students who were not able to move home. We had close to 500 students that lived on our campus. Now you might be thinking, okay, well, how is that impactful to the Jesuit identity or to the mission or to the legacy of Boston College? Well, people went above and beyond their roles and responsibilities. I mean, people checking on students, making sure that they were in touch with their faculty, making sure that resources were available, facilities management staff, housekeepers, Boston College Police Department, our Office of Residential Life, dining services, a number of offices and people stayed and staffed buildings. So our students that were living on campus would not only be healthy and safe, University Health Services, of course, but would have as close to a communal experience as they could. And then beyond that, transitioning them to moving off campus. We had to close our university, all of our residence halls this past summer, but extraordinary efforts on a number of different fronts for a number of different offices. And then I would go further to say all of the work from the provost's office to the academic deans to the faculty to a number of administrative offices to help us reopen. To me, in my 24 years, I would say that exemplifies who we are as a Jesuit Catholic University, but more importantly, it typifies the faculty and administrators that we have, that the mission is important to them. Now, I'm not saying people would not do their jobs or they put things aside, but I'm here to tell you that people went above and beyond, not in their general role responsibilities and job descriptions, but I can think of dozens of people that were going full-time, full tilt, as they say. So that would be my example. Now, again, that's not anything from a programmatic or a specific example, but a university-wide approach. And I'm sure other schools did a magnificent job as well. I can only speak about the university that I'm very proud of and my colleagues inside the classroom and out, that not only helped our students transition off in March, we kept our students safe who had to stay with us and it helped them to transition out, but then spent countless hours to helping us reopen. So that would be the best example I think I could share to that question.
I'd like to add just a simple thing was that we have the luxury of having a theologate for Jesuits associated with Boston College. We have over 80 young Jesuits studying for the priesthood on campus, and another good 35 Jesuits who are teaching and administrators at the university. So we have well over 100 Jesuits who daily are walking and moving through the campus, participating in programs. Students are meeting these people day in and day out, and the Jesuits themselves will not let that Jesuit heritage be forgotten and the traditions of the Jesuits be forgotten. So we have so many Jesuits on here. You can't spend a day without meeting 3 or 4 of them, and then it's just unbelievable that way. So we benefit from the fact that we have so many Jesuits on campus who won't let us forget what it means for us to be a Jesuit and Catholic university.
And I guess maybe one way to follow up that question, when we start talking about the intellectual rigor at Boston College, something that always comes up would be our core, university core curriculum. How would you say that is I don't even want to say an outgrowth because it's so central to what happens academically at Boston College, but maybe for those out there who are wondering, okay, what is this core? How does that come out of a university's mission? Well, what could you say about that?
So Father Tony talked about this in one of his earlier responses, maybe his first response, that an education isn't just for yourself, but it's for others. So this idea of a liberal arts education, the more we learn, the more we have a sense of our own selves, the more direction we'll have, and then the more we can give out to other people as well. I think that the idea of the core curriculum is at the heart of formation and thinking about what education of an entire person is. I know for me in Pulse, if there was not a philosophy and theology core, chances are there would be fewer students taking a class like Pulse. But I know that because they're taking this course, something is happening for them in these courses. So the core helps to create the structures, if you will, that discipline students' minds and hearts to be able to ask important questions. It's sort of like they're learning all these skills. They're going to learn so much stuff in the course of 4 years, but what are they going to do with it? And so I think what the core curriculum is trying to help them do is A, discover things they don't already know that they might be interested in, and B, help them address some of the questions of, I'm learning all this, what am I going to do with it? And so what happens then in campus ministry is it provides another way for students to engage those questions of, what am I going to do with my life? And what am I going to do with all this education I'm receiving? Sometimes students are resistant to the core, no doubt about it, because you have to do this or you have to do that. There's a certain grace in figuring out what we're not good at, as much as there is a grace in learning about things that we didn't know we would enjoy. So I think there are multiple benefits to the core that really tie into the idea of formation.
I think Megan is absolutely right with that last comment. It's just as important for you to realize where your limitations may be. But when I was a kid, there was a chaplain at Yale University when I was growing up. His name was William Sloane Coughlin. He had a great line I steal, and his line is this. There's one expression in the English language that I really hate, said Sloane Coughlin, and it's this: put your best foot forward. I've always been interested, he said, in the other foot that you're hiding, the one that's kind of your weaker foot, because that's the one I want you to really focus on. And I want you to strengthen your weaker foot as much as you can so you can stand on two fairly strong legs to engage the world. And I think what Megan was hinting at was the core actually shows a lot of people their weaker legs and encourages them to kind of strengthen not only their things they're good at, but strengthen the things that they're not as good at, so that they can stand in our world ready to give to the world all that we would expect out of a Jesuit university. So not only your good foot, but the other foot is just as important. And I think the core does give students an opportunity to identify the bad foot. And it also gives people a common experience that hopefully in the resident halls, they're talking about things that they have taken in common. And that's the other benefit, I think, of the core.
And if I could just add, I wholeheartedly agree with Father Tony and Megan. I've had the privilege of being an academic advisor the last 7 years. And again, I've never stepped into a classroom, but being invited in to help, I've learned a tremendous amount. And one of the things that I've been so impressed with have been some of the amazing changes over the last several years to our core. And I can tell you, working with a lot of first year students who are really at the pre-major stage, it has really challenged. Father Tony used the word nudge before. It has challenged, it has pushed, and in a good way. And I was smiling when Megan was talking, because so many of my students, wow, I came in with econ, or I came in with poli-sci, but I came in, or my family challenged me this, or said I should have this major. And they take some of the core, and they're different people. Now, I'm not saying they transform overnight, but it's an amazing journey for them. And I've had some great conversations. And then as they move on to full faculty advisors, I can't say enough about the changes and the way that we're meeting them where they are, and pushing them, nudging them, or really moving them to a place that is really fulfilling them, because they're feeling called for something else, something more, as Megan said.
It seems like the next question is shifting a little bit away from academics and is more on kind of activities and programs. It says, the culture of respect and support of others was evident in our family's visit to campus in the fall. We know culture is driven by action and behaviors. Can you speak to other activities, programs, or efforts on campus that support students, staff, and community that feeds your culture of action for the common good?
Let me, I can talk about the intersections programs that are offered for faculty and staff on campus. And I think it was, I want to say around the year 2000. Chris, you've been here longer than I have, so maybe you can help with the timeline. But there was a sense that there's something unique about BC. There's something special, and in order for that to be communicated to students and to sort of be a living presence in the university, faculty and staff need to also learn about BC's mission. So there are programs that are continuously offered for the purpose of helping faculty and staff to learn about BC's mission in terms of education, and then who we can be as adults on campus for the students who we encounter in a classroom or in the co-curricular spaces. So that's one way, for example, I think, in a very powerful way, that BC is trying to help all of its citizens understand what BC's educational mission is, and its history too.
I think that's a very important point because, as I said earlier, that the quote from Father Butler that we're a school and not a church, and principal agents of formation on this campus are the faculty. And the more the faculty and the administration learns about the Jesuit traditions and spiritual life of the Jesuits, it just intensifies their effectiveness in the classroom at a Jesuit Catholic university. So I agree with Megan.
Yeah, Megan, you're right on. Gosh, I remember that. And the university received some very, very generous grants and funding that brought us together. And, you know, I can sit back right now and think of at least 7 or 8, 9 faculty members that over the last 18 to 20 years, I developed a relationship with, that we work collaboratively because of that type of program, Intersections being one, and a number of others where we've been able to come together. And you know, I hear from colleagues at other schools where they feel like, okay, there's a challenge between the administration or the staff and faculty. Well, you know, we do this, you know, BC, it's very different. You know, I agree with the terminology. Formation, well, the laboratory of student formation is in the classroom. It plays itself out in the residence halls. It plays itself out in our retreats, in our volunteer and service learning programs. So we have a very collaborative spirit, and that goes a long way to programs like that. I would also say that the way we structure our programs, we're collaborative in terms of university mission and ministry with faculty, with the Office of Student Affairs, or I should say the Division of Student Affairs. We look at programs that you know, have been trademarks at our university, but we assess everything. And I think that's an important aspect, and something really that all of you need to hear is that, okay, great, because the For Boston program has been around for 30 years, or the Kairos program has been here for 22 years, or Pulse has been in existence for just at an anniversary last year. You know, we assess these programs. We assess them based upon student need, but beyond student feedback, and that's important. And then when we weave in, whether it be Jesuits or faculty, I can think of a retreat that we run. We run a silent retreat in January called Manresa Retreat, named after St. Ignatius Loyola and his pilgrimage and journey. But we bring in faculty, staff, and Jesuits to help us. But the reason we do that is because students told us in the past, it's great to see these campus ministers, but you know, we would love to have more conversation partners. So that's just a small example, but I really think the collaboration and the spirit of cooperation between administrative staff and faculty, it's just, I can't even tell you how important that is for us to be able to meet the needs for not only the students in the classroom, but outside of that as well too.
Mhm.
And Chris, I want to follow up on a couple things you said. You mentioned something called For Boston, and you mentioned Kairos as a retreat. Are those types of opportunities things where you feel that students feel supported and that kind of leads to this culture of action for the common good.
Absolutely. And I would use the term servant leader. And that's a term that a lot of us use at the university. The servant leader at Boston College is a woman or man for and with others, not just for, but with them. It's not so much putting someone ahead of oneself, but putting them on the journey with that other person. So servant leader opportunities, it could be a resident assistant position. It could be an orientation leader. It could be one of our culture clubs. It could certainly be one of our service or immersion opportunities, our international immersion program. It could certainly be someone who has done service projects or has given of themselves volunteering. So I think if you look at any of our programs, and again, I would use our divisional programs or across the university, those opportunities, applying to a program. And the first thing people are saying, well, what if I don't get it? Well, that's okay, because you're probably called to something else, whether it's a retreat opportunity. Those are formative opportunities outside of the classroom. So it's back to what we had talked about earlier, that experiential. So when you're in the classroom setting and you're experiencing, you want to give back, you want to do something more. Well, that's what we talked about, that reflective piece. Maybe someone like Megan or another faculty member or an academic dean says to someone saying, you ought to think about this. All right. Again, not having to sign up for everything, but an opportunity such as for Boston, where we have over 600 students give of their time. Very similar program to what the Pulse program is, but there's not an academic credit given towards it. Or someone that says, you know what, I'm struggling a little bit with my faith identity. I had this class in theology, but I'm thinking about doing a retreat. Well, we can introduce you, as Father Tony said before, we have people that can introduce you to those types of programs. So yes, I think they're formative opportunities, but it's not the end all and be all. It's just not going to happen overnight saying, okay, Stephen Koo is going to be this formed individual that's ready to go out and set the world aflame, or a way to go out and do this. It takes place over time. It's taking different courses based upon the experience you just had. But the servant leader, she or he, is one that puts other people first, and they're willing to journey with them, not to lead directly, but to journey with them.
I think BC has a very strong service culture, service immersion culture. We have some program. You heard Megan. I think, would you say 400 were in the Pulse program?
About 500.
500. I think we have over 700 people in our For Boston program. We have over almost 300 people in our Appalachia program, APA program. We have over 100 people in about 100 people in our Arupe International program. But all of our service programs, the BC Bigs, which is done out of the volunteer service learning, a big program. All our programs have a reflection component. They just don't go and do something. They come back and they intentionally think about the experience they had in order to grow, as we said, to become much more than they were yesterday, to think about what they've experienced and what it really means for the common good. And I think I think you could, right across the board, you'd say that our programs with our reflective component and our prayer component are successful at promoting the common good, at least the awareness how important it is for us to be sensitive to what's happening in the world in which we live.
Thank you. I think we only have time for 2 more questions. So this next question says, if coming from a Catholic background, what are the practical ways that BC keeps liturgy relevant for college kids? For example, mass times that fit typical schedule, late night times or compressed versions, including popular music or sports teams, or relating homily to daily student life, etc.
Well, on Sunday, I know this, on Sundays, we have mass starting at 8 o'clock in the AM, and our last mass is at 11 PM in the evening. And so we have plenty of opportunities for worship, not just for the Catholic community, for our multi-faith communities too. We have a multi-faith chapel, and that's teeming with activity as well, worship activity. And besides that, we try to involve a lot of our students in the different ministries and from music to the Eucharistic ministry to lectors, greeters. We try to involve a lot of our students, and we try to choose preachers that are homilists that are current and attractive and can take the Bible and the New York Times and make them talk to each other. So I think those kinds of things are a hallmark of our school, and we keep working to get better. As Chris says, we even assess our liturgies, how we're doing, and so that we can continually be better at it. So.
And again, I would just say, especially right now, we're very sensitive to so much screen fatigue, and we recognize that we work collaboratively with St. Ignatius Church. We have an excellent working relationship with the Jesuit community as well too. So we're going to meet needs where they are, and you know what? We may change it after this semester if students tell us they're looking for something more. So I think we always have our eyes up and our ears open to meet those needs the best way we can.
If I was going to end with one comment, I'd end with this one. You know, when we talked about, the core curriculum and Boston colleges, we talked about how intentional we are at everything. I don't want to leave the impression that there's not a role for serendipity at this school. Sometimes you're just lucky. You didn't get into the class you really wanted, so you had to take this class that you didn't want. And it turns out to be the most formative class you ever imagined. Or you're in a coffee line waiting for coffee and you think you're not going to make it to the counter, and you get talking to a student who tells you about a program they're involved in, and all of a sudden you find yourself aware of something and doing something you never imagined doing just because you're lucked out. There's we leave enough room for serendipity at BC too. And we think, as Megan said earlier, she used the word grace. Grace works through the nudging, but also through luck. And so I wouldn't want our students who might be listening to this to think that it's a straitjacket academic experience around here. It is formal, but there's a lot of opportunity for serendipity to work its way into your curriculum.
And I know we have some questions that we won't get to, but our final question is, as we put these panels together, we want to find people who have done a lot at Boston College, who have, I'll say, been influential at Boston College for countless students. And so the final question is, as people who have become such integral, and I will say that you are integral members of this Boston College community, what do you see as your own mission here?
Well, given my position now, I think my mission is this, in a nutshell. Help the people that I supervise do their job well, so that they are the people on the ground level doing the actual day-to-day work with our students. So my mission here is to enable them to do their work efficiently and spectacularly.
Given my two roles at BC, I think as a classroom teacher, hopefully I'm always thinking about how the material can be made accessible to students relative to their own lives. So to keep it interesting, so to do a good job teaching the material, but to find ways to make it fresh or new for the students themselves, and to make it fresh for me too, to change it up every year so that it doesn't just fall into some unattended habit. So that's part of it, and to give them an opportunity for robust learning. And my job as the director of the program is to try to develop partnerships with community organizations, that partnerships that will help to enable the pedagogical goals of Pulse to be affected. So there's a significant administrative portion of my job, but also the teaching job. But they all go together because it's really about trying to create a well-functioning learning opportunity for students so that they can grow intellectually and personally and spiritually.
Yeah, I would say three things. If I could change it, even with my boss on this program with us, I would meet with students every day and not do anything else. It just doesn't work like that. But no, the first thing I would say is one of my prime responsibilities as an administrator is to certainly manage the day-to-day with a lot of our campus ministry staff. Very similar to what Tony said, Father Tony said, to make sure my colleagues have what they need. You know, do they have the appropriate resources? Do they have the support? Do they have someone advocating for them from a departmental level? That's the first thing. The second thing is to introduce campus ministry and to help us be key stakeholders in key resource, key resource people for our campus community. So when there's a crisis, or if there's a need, or if students and other colleagues inside the classroom or out are looking for people that are going to support them and their work and meet with students collaboratively, my job is to help promote our resources, our pastoral care, our programs, our faith formation, our multi-faith ministry, all across the board to our colleagues. And really the third thing is what I said earlier, is to find a way to be present to the needs that are presented to us every day, no matter where a student, she or he, is coming to us from and whatever the issue is, being able to have an open door, to be welcoming, and to have the grace and spirit of being passionate about what you do. I think you've heard that tonight here, but there are so many others that do the same. So I think those three things.
All right, thank you. You know, as always, this hour definitely flies by, and it's amazing how quickly it goes. But before we conclude, I really want to thank our panelists, Chris, Megan, Father Tony. We cannot thank you enough for taking time out of yet another one of your evenings, I'm sure, to help Boston College and the future of Boston College. I would say, whether it was individually or collectively, you've all helped everyone out there have a better understanding of what Boston College is all about, and we can't thank you enough. As we wind down, so I mentioned at the beginning, this is one of our final programs. So as we wind down on our office's virtual open house, which has been happening since the middle of September, I want to remind folks that we will have two more programs this Saturday, October 17th, one at 11 a.m., a discussion with Professor Tracy Regan from the economics department, and then our closing session at 4 p.m., which will be a final Q&A with the admission staff. So to register for either or both, you can go to the visit page on the BC Admission website. If you are not available to watch them live, please know that all webinars are recorded and you can eventually find them on the virtual open house page. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We certainly wish you all the best as you continue to navigate both the college search and the application process. And once again, from in and around Chestnut Hill, Massachusetts, we wish you a very, very good night. Thanks so much for being here.
Good night, everybody.